Non-duality has become, or has been, a buzzword for a good while now. And it's a good buzzword. It's kind of got a real mysterious sound to it. It's also other than all the stuff we already know about, which makes it exotic, makes it interesting. It's not just the same old boring stuff that we're always going on about. Non-duality is something else again. But the thing about this, even though it is great to, be talking and thinking about non-duality and all of that stuff, it is great. But the problem is the word non-dual doesn't tell us anything and can't tell us anything. It can't tell us anything because in order for it to tell us something, we'd have to understand it. It'd have to make sense to our minds, to our brains. But the only thing that's to make sense to our minds is duality, pairs of opposites. And so we really, really can't expect to understand non-duality. In other words, it's a sound, it's a word, but we can't say what it means. We haven't a clue what it means. We could say, okay, it means that there's no opposites, that everything is one. That's what people generally say, and that has a good ring to it. Everything is one. But we can't say what that means. And it doesn't mean anything to us other than a concept. Generally, it doesn't mean anything to us in terms, except as a concept, the same as we might have a concept of tea cakes and peanut butter and punk rock and left wing politics and anything. It's just a concept. There's a kind of blandness to concepts when we look into it. Peas in a pod, they're all the same concepts, concepts, concepts. Back in the 70s, it was like the very word concept was kind of cool and edgy. And so there was kind of like, oh, I presume it was. I don't really remember myself. Probably it might have seemed cool and edgy to me too. I can't really remember. Probably it did. But the thing is, what the hell is a concept? It's just us saying what things are, projecting our ideas onto the world, as we're always so very keen to do. So they had concept albums, and it was out there. It was definitely out there. Because the implication is it's possible to have a really, really cool concept and everyone will be like, wow, that's a really cool concept. That's fantastic. That's so out there. But it isn't. What the point that I'm making it in a long-winded way is that there are no cool concepts. Concepts are only concepts. And all concepts are all we can understand. So straight away, that kind of puts us in a funny position. We can get excited about cool concepts and think we're getting somewhere, but we're not because it's all just the same old ding dong. So in psychology, we could say that there is such a thing as non-dual psychology, which you can bet your bottom dollar will be way better than the crappy sort of stupid dumbass dual psychology that we've got. I the contemporary psychology, which is the only psychology we've got, which expresses everything in terms of pairs of complementary opposites. Of course it does. That's all the thinking mind can ever do is see things in terms of complementary opposites. But here's the problem. The problem is the output of the thinking mind is a number of statements which are constructed in a polar way. They're strung like hammocks between two competing opposites, and we have lots of these opposites, and we can kind of imagine that we know a lot about whatever it is we're talking about because we're bringing in lots of different axes, lots of different dimensions, not just the one pair of opposites. We could have hundreds of pairs of opposites. We could be talking nine-dimensional geometry or whatever. But the thing is, as long as it's all expressed in terms of competing opposites, it doesn't come to anything. It's a mere abstraction, not partaking in reality at all, because reality is this stuff which has absolutely nothing to do with opposites and competing opposites. Nothing to do with concepts. Couldn't be less connected to our concepts and ideas and our rationalization. So we could have this thing called non-dual psychology, and that'd be great. But what would it be about? What would it look like? What things could we say if we were non-dual psychologists? It's a cool thing to be. I reckon it's a pretty cool thing to be. It's better than being a normal, conventional psychologist. You can't pair the two. Non-dual is way out there. But the only thing, what the hell does it mean? And how does it help us? And what would we say as non-dual psychologists? And the answer is we couldn't say very much at all. We couldn't say anything because no matter what we say, it's coming out of the thinking mind and it's interpreted by the thinking mind. So we ain't really getting anywhere. In actual fact, it's easier to get somewhere in terms of poetry or fiction or art or something like that because you can infer something without actually saying it. Because if you say it, you've not said it, so you have to infer it. It has to be something you see out the side corner of your eye. You can do that with art. It's very hard with academic writing, kind of very logical and non-metaphorical, prosaic writing. You can't do it if you try and pin it down, basically. But there is still some scope for us to talk around it, to talk around non-duality, and thereby maybe infer something in a subtle kind of a way, without meaning to, but some kind of inference will be there, possibly, if we talk about it, in a roundabout kind of a way. What we can say about duality, so going back to duality, what we can say about duality is that duality gives rise to itself. This is, Plato said, this is how the world came into being, one opposite from the other. And you can see how one opposite can give rise to the other. I just need to write down up, and already I've invoked down. So up has given rise to down, without me even trying. It just automatically happens that way. And the same way, if I have down, that automatically gives rise to up. So what we have here is a situation where one opposite gives rise to the complementary opposite, and that complementary opposite also gives rise to the first opposite. So they both give rise to each other in a mutual way. And none comes first. It isn't really a case that you pick one opposite and then the other one comes. By picking one, you pick the other. And we can say something else about these opposites. They're mutually arising, as the phrase in Buddhism has it. But also, another way of looking at that is to say, well, when you have got one opposite, it only means something in terms of the other. So yes only means something in terms of no. If there was no no, what the hell would yes mean? But when we look at this, what that means is opposites, the world of opposites, bootstraps itself into existence, which is what you could call a very cheap trick, since there's no effort needed and nothing has really been achieved. It only appears to have been achieved. So the world that is made up of opposites, which is the world that we know, gets bootstrapped automatically into existence. And once we're in it, stuff will make sense to us because we're seeing things in terms of opposites. But the stuff that makes sense to us only makes sense to us within this bootstrapped world that we have created, within which the opposites make sense, however much sense that statement makes. So what we have here is a world that exists on its own terms only, is real on its own terms only. That only seems to mean something when we're on the inside of it, looking at it in its own terms. And this world comes about kind of automatically. It just comes about by an accident. It's so trivial. It's such a cheap trick. It's kind of like mold growing on a slice of bread. It just happens. It's not really a great thing. It's a decay. It's an entropic decay of symmetry. Symmetry. There's no plus on one end and minus on the other because it's symmetrical. There's no differentiation. And that's reality. So we can degrade reality and degrade it via a process of decay, via a process of entropic degradation. And what we end up with as a result is the world that is made up of opposites that doesn't really exist, but which, all the same, once we're in it, we have absolutely no chance of seeing the real world, the non-dual world, the world that isn't made up of opposites.